rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. Yo, welcome back to another episode. If you haven't done it yet, make sure you hit subscribe, make sure you hit the bell notification for the next videos. If this video was helpful, make sure you like it, share it everywhere with anyone, no matter what. Here we go. So that quote that I said a minute ago was actually considered to be one of the original slogans for the United States. All right, rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. Jefferson kind of liked that, others liked it as well, and they put it on an emblem where the picture was actually Moses parting the Red Sea. Instead, they stuck with the eagle and all that stuff, so it's a little different. But that whole quote, all right, that quote brings us to the question that a lot of people are asking today, especially Christians. Should Christians obey the government? And if so, when? A big verse that a lot of people love to use is the one in Romans, all right? Romans 13, 1 and 2 pretty much flat out says, obey the government. The idea of family was the institution that God first created, the first one ever done. You look at Genesis. But then, when the more families that are living in a closer vicinity, you need civil government. And there's a lot of the heroes in the Bible, a lot of them were civil servants, if you think about it, especially in the Old Testament. A lot of them were civil servants. And so there is this element of that government is important. It plays an important role. But if it doesn't work out, it's not God's idea, it's our application of God's idea, almost like everything else. And so we see that in Romans it says, hey, you got to obey them, understanding that there is a purpose for government. But how do you take Romans and then you compare it to Acts chapter 5? When the local government is telling Peter and all the apostles to stop preaching in the name of Jesus, stop telling them about Jesus, stop spreading the gospel. And Peter, like a boss, goes and says, we must obey God, not man. So where does that balance? Well, even in Peter's own words, obey God, not man. See, that is how you can know if and when to obey the government. All right, listen, there are certain things that the government can do that, hey, you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. Just because in the Bible it doesn't talk about speed limits doesn't mean that, hey, I'm not going to listen to man. I'm going to drive however I want. Listen, there are certain regulations, certain things that are, we should comply with. In fact, everything that we should do as Christians should be guided by the one great commandment, to love others as I have loved you. And so if there is a law that is meant to love others, that is meant to benefit others, not hurt others, that's something that we should comply with. For example, things like speed limits and all those other things. But what happens when there is a law that is damaging, that is hurting others, that is not helping others? Well, those are things that we should be involved in. Those are things that we should step up and say, hey, we need to fix that. But then also, here's the danger. Here's the danger right here. Because, see, there's a tendency that government has in any culture, in any society, where government tries to replace God. And in fact, listen, that's not mankind's idea, all right? Those are demons, that's devils, that's demonic strategies, where they get people to replace God, forget God, and focus on those. And you look at people as your saviors. You look at the political elite as your saviors. And then those who are in position of power, right? Oh, that's that quote about power corrupting you. I totally botched that right now. All right. That quote, all right, or that idea of power corrupting you, it does. And so then people just want more and more and more. And then you see government replacing God, taking over God. When you see government dictating truth, you know what the Bible actually says about good government? Good government is supposed to punish the wicked, all right, and encourage and celebrate the good, the righteous. So there should be laws that punish wickedness and should encourage those to be righteous. But according to whose standard? That's the problem. It's not mankind's idea, not our idea of what is right, what is wrong. It's according to God's. So yes, us as human beings, us as Christians, there should be a level of submission to government, but there's also a responsibility to government to be submissive to God. Anytime government tries to take the place of God, then we need to be careful because it never ends well for anyone. And that's where Jesus talks a lot. He says his famous quote in Mark 12, verse 17, he says, give to Caesar what's Caesar's, give to God what is God's, right? There's certain things that, hey, there's certain civil responsibilities that we are called to do, whether it's pay our taxes, follow good laws, follow the laws, this, that, all those stuff. But in the end, he says, but get to God what is God's. See, we got to be careful not to give to Caesar what we should be giving to God. That's the important part. Because if Caesar or if government begins to say, this is okay, when God, we know it's not. For example, things like abortion, that's why it's such a big deal. All right, when so many other things, when the government says, obey this law, yet to obey that law means I have to disobey a fundamental principle of God, like foundational, that is something that we are called to stand up and say, no, I'm not gonna comply. You have to ask yourself this question. If obeying government in this specific way means I have to disobey God, then that's a problem. That's a problem. And I know that can kind of get a little, lines and weird, and I'm not sure, and get a little cloudy. I understand. But that's the point. We cannot give to Caesar what belongs to God. In fact, here's the bottom line. Civil disobedience must be based in loving obedience to God. Civil disobedience must be based in loving obedience to God. Look, if there's a law, if there's something that is messed up and you don't like it, and there's injustice, okay, injustice doesn't give you permission to justify sin, all right, to justify hurting or doing something wicked. Injustice does not justify your sin. No, as Christians, any form of civil disobedience must still be a reflection of love. It must be done in loving obedience. So we have to make sure we balance that. We have to make sure that no matter what we do, it is still done in love, out of the love of God, for love of others. So civil disobedience must be based in loving obedience. Here's why. Because when God becomes your God, you become happy and free. But when government becomes your God, you become a miserable slave.